The Ukraine-Russian war, where the United Nations, NATO, the UK, the United States of America are all fighting for the democracy of Ukrainian citizens. What a load of bollocks. You see, Ukraine is actually one of the richest countries in the entire world in terms of natural resources, and whoever controls Ukraine controls those resources. So let's go through some of them today, and then you might understand why we're really sending troops to Ukraine. Natural gas. Ukraine has Europe's second largest gas reserves after Norway, with an estimated 1.1 trillion cubic meters of untapped gas. And Ukraine also has some of the biggest lithium reserves in Europe, critical for making batteries for electric cars and future tech industries. Then there's uranium. Ukraine is one of the largest uranium deposits in Europe, which are essential for nuclear weapons. Then there's the coal and iron ore. Ukraine is home to some of the largest iron ore deposits in the entire world, making it a key player in steel production. Now, the funny thing is if Ukraine stayed aligned with Moscow, Moscow would control these resources. If Ukraine is integrated into the West, Western corporations, especially big oil, big tech, and the military-industrial complex, get the first dibs, don't they? Now, you see why this war is about more than just borders? But it's also the real breadbasket of Europe. See, it controls global food supply. Ukraine isn't just rich in minerals, it's one of the biggest food producers in the entire world. 12% of global wheat exports, 16% of global corn exports, and 50% of global sunflower oil exports. It's not just about feeding Europe. Ukraine's grain feeds Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia. If you control Ukraine, you control global food supply chains. Interesting, hey? And guess who's already circling like vultures? BlackRock and Western investment firms are buying up Ukrainian farmland at record rates. US and EU agribusiness giants are moving in, taking over local food production. And if Russia had control over this, the West would be dependent on Moscow for food security. This war isn't about saving Ukrainian citizens. It's about making sure Russia doesn't get a monopoly on these essential resources. Then, of course, there's the NATO expansion, squeezing Russia out of Europe. Do you ever wonder why NATO is so obsessed with Ukraine? Because if Ukraine joins NATO, it basically means Western military bases are then on Russia's doorstep. Western corporations control Ukraine's resources, and the final nail in the coffin for Russia's influence in Europe. Russia knows this, which is why they drew a red line on Ukraine joining NATO. The West ignored it, provoked Russia, and now we have a war likely to escalate into World War III. We can't possibly allow Putin to have Ukraine because he'd get all these resources, and then the Soviet Union, which doesn't exist anymore, would be pushing up against NATO's borders. But it's perfectly okay to do it the other way around, isn't it? And push NATO's borders into Russia. Oh my God. But here's the kicker. Even though NATO claims it's defending Ukraine, they've made it abundantly clear that Ukraine isn't actually getting membership anytime soon. Oh, but they can join the EU because that puts them in the economic market, doesn't it? But NATO? Real military protection? Nah, don't need to do that, do we? And why is that? Because NATO's goal isn't to protect Ukraine, it's to use Ukraine as a battering ram against Russia while Western allies loot the country dry. And let's make this abundantly clear. Ukraine is a laundromat for Western elites. Let's talk about corruption. Ukraine has long been one of the most corrupt countries in Europe, and since 2014, billions of dollars in Western aid have flowed into Ukraine with zero oversight. I was thinking about cutting to an image there of Zelensky polishing his yacht, but where's the money actually gone? No one really seems to know. And who's benefiting? How much of this aid is just being laundered back into Western pockets? The military-industrial complex is making record profits off this war. Politicians, defense contractors, and aid organizations are cashing in while ordinary Ukrainians suffer. And so do we here in the UK, because we're paying for all this. This war is nothing more than a money-making machine, and that's exactly why the West doesn't want it to end. And the bigger picture is this: Russia versus the West. At the end of the day, this war is not about Ukraine. It's about blocking Russian influence in Europe. It's about controlling Ukraine's resources before Russia can. And it's about expanding NATO's power. And most importantly, it's about keeping the Western war machine running at full speed. Ukraine is just a pawn in a much bigger game. So the next time Zelensky sits there crying that he doesn't want peace, you know exactly why. And if you think Western leaders actually care about Ukraine's democracy, sovereignty, or people, you're living in a dream world. Stop making Putin out like he's some evil dictator. It's all about money, power, and resources. Because let's be honest, this war isn't going to end with Ukraine winning against Russia, because Ukraine has a collapsing population, an utterly shattered economy, and a military that is running out of men. Meanwhile, Western corporations and political elites are getting richer than ever. This war has never, ever been about saving Ukraine. It's about who gets control of the spoils. And right now, Ukraine is being carved up like a prize, while its people are being sacrificed for corporate and geopolitical interests. Follow the money, and as they say, you'll see the truth. So the next time someone tells you that the West is standing with Ukraine, ask them this. If the West really cared about Ukraine, why didn't they push for peace? If they really cared, why are they profiteering off Ukrainian suffering? And if they really cared, why are they more interested in resources than rebuilding the country? But then again, some feeble minds just can't contemplate it's never been about Ukraine. It's about power, profit, and control. And we are and will pay the price for this, because we will not benefit as a society from the money profiteering that goes on there. But what the hell do I know? I'm just some far-right fascist racist that just spits out misinformation, even though it's all perfectly researchable and really easy to find, if you're looking and want to see it. Problem is, some of you don't, do you? A lot easier to blame Putin than get the facts, isn't it?